Uh, let's get into it.
All
I can't
right.
wait. I can't wait to cut that out later.
Do
That's just
not.
for the people who are live. I have to. I do.
Oh, right.
Um, all right, let's get into it.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Alan.
And I'm Devin.
And today, Devin starts his long journey across Middle Earth to make me watch Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, for the first time, beginning to end with the extended editions. Just in time for the Rings of Power. So, yeah, this is a real thing.
Would you like me to take over?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so just for those of you who have been, I guess, like Alan, today we're going to be talking about Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the extended cut. This was released in 2001. The original cut is 2 hours and 58 minutes long. This one is 3 hours and 30 minutes long. So first off, I have a question for you, Alan.
Yes.
Who do you think you are?
So this has been on the list for a while now. So here's my disclaimer. I have seen Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay.
I've never seen, as far as I know, the extended version.
Okay.
When I say I saw it, I don't remember chunks of this movie because I either saw it when it first came out on VHS and we got it from Blockbuster, or it was in college with a bunch of buddies drinking, and by the end of it, I just don't remember stuff and did not care. So there's always been like a trilogy I want to see. I know I have seen Fellowship of the Ring the whole way through. I have seen parts of The Two Towers, and I think I've seen like maybe 5 frames of Return of the King. So
is it okay? So is it out of lack of interest that you haven't watched the other two? Because I'm sure, like, at some point, plot points of this movie that we saw today kind of, fell into your memory, and you knew there was more, but was there just not the motivation to keep going?
So every time I sat down to watch this with friends, it would be for a marathon. So it'd be like, we're going to watch all 3 tonight. And we get through the first one and we're drinking. We get part way through the second one and we don't make it the whole way through that. And then we just never get to the third one.
It's a tricky marathon.
Yeah. But it's been on my list. I bought the Blu-rays, as you can see back here by my spaceship from Independence Day and Megazord.
Well placed.
Yes. But yeah, I just haven't gotten around to them. And I know you've been wanting me to do this for a while on the show. So I bought them for this purpose. And here we are. The next 3 weeks will be Lord of the Rings. So it'll be Fellowship this week, Two Towers next week, and then Return of the King the following week.
That's good. And I truly cannot wait. And so to give you a bit of a history on me with Lord of the Rings, since you did a little bit, I never read the books. I know it's probably my bad. They're on my list to read. I just haven't gotten to them yet. But I absolutely love these movies when they came out. I read The Hobbit, I think 4 or 5 times as a kid. So like I was familiar with the world through that. And I mean, I'm going to talk to you. We'll have to talk specifically about our reactions to certain things or to certain parts of the movie, obviously, when we get there. But my background is that I've loved these movies. I think I've seen this extended version. This might be my 4th or 5th watch through of the extended version. I don't watch it yearly or anything like that. But man, when it's on, I get so into it. I was doing my research today, listening to the music. I was traveling for work today, listening to the music. I love these movies, and I am so excited to genuinely talk to you about something that I love so much that you just haven't seen before. So that makes me incredibly excited.
Yeah, and by the end of this, I'll be able to decide if Randall in Clerks 2 is right. That there is only one return, and it's not of the king, it's of the Jedi.
Okay, fair. So let's start with first impressions. So
Okay.
You watched the extended edition completely the way through. What did you think?
I am amazed that on a Blu-ray, you have to split this up into 2.
This was in 2 on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it cuts off right after the formation of the Fellowship, and then the rest of it is on the second disc. which is a weird choice, but I don't know if that's like a compression thing, so they don't have to compress it as much, or what. Um, Having seen this one before, I couldn't tell you what was added to this extended edition.
Oh, we'll talk. Don't
Um,
worry.
I have a feeling I know a few spots just from pacing, but there like, even though I know I've seen this movie before, there are chunks of this that I just straight up forgot existed.
Like,
Well, in my mind, spoilers, Gandalf dies, and then the Fellowship breaks up. Like that's how
oh, it just happens right away.
it just happens.
Like,
Like
there's
right,
not.
they get out of the caves. Sean Bean goes for the ring, and then they break up.
Oh, so you missed that whole, like, the whole wood scene, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
But no, I enjoyed it. I feel like there was a lot more of the Shire in this than I remember.
That's one of the major additions, is they have more Shire in this.
I think like I watched this with headphones on because I was like, it's too late to be blasting this on my sound system, so I'm going to put on headphones so I get the full experience of the sound effects, the music, and I really enjoyed that experience. That's probably how I'm going to watch the next two as well.
Okay.
But no, I enjoyed this. Like, this is a very good setup to the rest of the trip. Like, I almost went right into the Two Towers, but I was like, I need to pace myself because that's another 5 hours of movie that I have to watch.
You will burn out quickly.
Yeah. And I think that's why I've never finished this trilogy before, is burnout. Like, I don't get to the end because it's just a lot to sit through at once. Even with this one, I didn't want to have to get up and put it in the other disc, so I just went to bed and watched the rest of it the next day. Which works. Like, it pretty much is 2 movies the way they split it, but
I mean, I think now that you say it, it's pretty kind of, depending on where they cut it after the Fellowship joins, it's a pretty smart cut. Because you get, essentially, from Frodo's perspective, you have to go from the Shire to Rivendell. He does the thing. And then, like, yeah, but a bit more. And then that's, like, a decent place to cut it. So I don't hate where they've specifically chosen to cut it.
And they ended it on a joke, which is like the best thing ever.
What was the joke?
The joke is, where are we going? Like, and then it just cuts.
That's where it cuts?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really fun, actually.
Yeah.
So how much do you know? So before we get into the actual movie itself, this movie, this series, this franchise is insane in terms of production, in terms of scale, in terms of effects that went behind it. I mean, there's so much that went into it that at this point is basically legendary, you know, with the effects and with how everything was done. How much do you know about what went into making the movie?
I know about Andy Serkis and his whole thing.
Okay.
I know that's more Two Towers. I know they filmed all 3 at once over a period of X many years, starting in the 90s, with everyone, and that they all got matching tattoos and.
Yeah. I mean, I'll get to Andy Serkis' stuff when we do the Two Towers because he's more in that. So I mean, for those of you that don't know the Andy Serkis stuff, tune in next week. I will discuss that. Trust me.
I know that it's New Zealand is Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And they filmed it all down there. And there's a lot of practical stuff with this, especially with the Shire. And that's about all I know.
I mean, that's fair. That's because, I mean, a lot of the stuff is you know, basically along the lines that you were talking about. So the movie itself took, I believe it's 5 years to film. And they ended up shooting it back to back to back. It was the first movie trilogy to have done that, to basically say, we're just going to shoot all of it at once. Let's hope that it comes out. One of the things that I saw in an article that I thought was really interesting that they said contributed specifically to this movie's success was its release date. And I had never placed this movie in historical context before. But
it's post 9/11, right?
Exactly. This movie was December, I think it was 21st, 2001. So literally months after 9/11. And they said part of that contributed to the movie's success because at that point people didn't want a movie about war. People didn't want a movie about any of that. They specifically wanted a movie where there are strong heroes, the heroes don't like war, those types of things. And to be fair, that's the same thing that contributed to the book success. The original book, when it was released, didn't do very, I mean, it did fine, but it didn't do very well initially. Hippies kind of adopted it and loved it. But then where it really started to get traction was specifically in the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, people looked to this as a sign of, oh, here's all of the anti-war stuff. These are pro-planet stuff. This is a great book for these reasons. And it actually shocked Tolkien how quickly and how like readily they adopted the book. So, you know, it was interesting how the way that it gained popularity kind of echoes the way the movie gained popularity, just in the timing of its release. So I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I know way too much about this. Stop me if I'm going. I just love this. So I know that you said that you like the movie. I love this movie. This movie is comfortable for me. This movie is like home. I will talk about it to death. So if I start to get too nerdy, you just stop me or rein me in, because that is where I live.
Okay.
So then I want to talk, if you don't mind, we're going on this journey through Middle Earth. Let's just go on the journey through Middle Earth. That'll be the format of this. Let's start in the Shire. That's where the movie starts. What did you think of the Shire? What did you think of the way that it looked, of that setup for those characters? Kind of walk me through.
Okay. So it was interesting watching it this time because since college, at the end of my college career, the Hobbit trilogy started coming out.
Yeah.
And I have seen the first Hobbit film in theaters with friend of the show, Chad. I believe I've told you this story before. We tried to get Chad on the show tonight, but he's not here, so I'm going to tell the story anyway. We went to see The Hobbit with Chad and a bunch of my wife's friends. Mm-hmm. She was my girlfriend at the time, but all of her friends, me and Chad. Chad's sitting next to me, and the music comes on for the Shire, and Chad just shakes me. He's like, "It's The Hobbit!" Like, he's like super excited, like a kid. And Anna turns to me and she says, "When did we get a child?" So that's been the jokes ever since. So watching the Shire stuff and the Bilbo stuff in this at the beginning, like, I remember a lot of that from that movie because a lot of the stuff they reference happens in that first Hobbit movie.
Good.
So like, it was fun picking up that, and I was thinking about, so how does it intercut with the two films? Like, because I know there's some crossover there. But I really enjoyed the Hobbit stuff because I know, like, the hobbits love food and have hairy feet, but like just spending some time in the Shire in the film, I thought was a lot of fun.
I mean, so for me, when I first saw it, the Shire is one of my favorite movie moments, like one of those favorite moments in a movie theater. So I had read specifically The Hobbit growing up, and The Hobbit, very much spends some time in the Shire. And the first second I saw the Shire in this movie, it was one of those things where that's exactly the way I pictured the Shire in my head. And it just put this stupid smile on my teenage face when I saw it. Or not, it wasn't even teen, it was 11. Stupid smile on my 11-year-old face. And like, that set me up to just love everything that came after it. I mean, the music in the Shire is still one of my favorite musical themes, I think, in any movie. And I think it does such a good job of introducing the world and the characters in the world in environments that they're comfortable in. So you can get that contrast to what happens later in the movie, I think. And I really like that. Just, oh, dang, I love this. I really love this opening. And I know that the whole, like, in the fantasy genre, the whole, like, small town person goes on big adventure is a bit of a trope.
Mm-hmm.
But man, does it do that trope well here.
I mean, it's the hero's journey, right? Like, it's
exactly it.
It's the leaving home and setting off on an adventure, just like Luke Skywalker. I'm not going to spend the next 3 weeks comparing this to Star Wars, but story-wise, like, it is the same thing, like leaving home and setting off on an adventure into the unknown.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Lucas has even said that the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is his, like, he or at least inspired this, or was inspired by this. Yeah, there we go. I nailed it.
His Star Wars trilogy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes me so, I don't know. Every time I see the Shire and I see the Hobbit in the opening scene, I just really like that. Did any of the characters at this point? So at this point, we're introduced to Frodo, we're introduced to Sam, we're introduced to Merry, Pippin, and we're introduced to Bilbo and to Gandalf. Do any of them resonate with you at this point? Who's your favorite?
Um. Pippin and what's the other one?
Merry.
Merry. Pippin and Merry, I think, are my favorites because they're just getting into mischief the whole time. But I also really like Gandalf because I've never read The Hobbit, so I don't know what Gandalf knows about the ring. And so it's like very fun to like watch him discover what Bilbo has had this whole time.
Yeah.
And like his journey of like for knowledge, like traveling, and the few moments where he's just like, do not confuse me for just just for fireworks. Like when he gets
Right.
all powerful and is Gandalf, it's like, okay, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite shots involve him specifically in Bilbo's house because of the forced perspective that they used, not only to make Bilbo and Frodo look small, but to make him look gigantic in relation to the house. And I looked it up, and it's all just practical effects and camera tricks in order to make that happen, which I guess good for them. So speaking of camera, oh god.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So speaking of camera tricks, how did the movie look for you? So while watching the movie, I realized this is a 21-year-old movie now. That is insane to me and genuinely hurts me. Did anything look outdated? Did anything feel outdated?
There were some CGI effects of like the giant battles, and they were quick shots that just didn't look like up to par. And then some of the slow-mo didn't really work as well for me. It just seemed choppy.
I realize one of my big bugbears now is old-timey slow-mo. Because you can tell they're just dropping frames like to make it happen, and it looks, well, you said choppy, yeah.
Yeah. So I said I watched this with headphones on. The only way I can do that is through my PlayStation. So I had to adjust the refresh rate on my PlayStation's Blu-ray player to watch this right because it was moving too fast. So I don't know if, and I hate that. Like I want it to seem cinematic and not do that weird frame blending thing.
Right.
So I had to fix that. And once I did, it was fine. Because I know when you get into The Hobbit, like the frame rates are weird, but Peter Jackson at least stuck to 24 frames for this. But yeah, that was the only thing that really didn't work well for me. The practical effects and makeup all still look fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, so just as like a peek behind it, like the practical effects on this were, I mean, all handmade. All of the swords in the movie are handmade. All of the daggers, they're all handmade. They're not CGI'd in later. I mean, the practical effects are to the point where they started planting the fields and the flowers for the Shire a year before they started principal filming, just to make it look like it was this lived-in place. I mean, the attention to detail is that insane here, which I absolutely loved. But one of the things that bothered me as far as shot composition was concerned was there are a couple of times when they have very old style camera shots that do age the movie, because coming into this I thought, oh, this movie's going to be timeless, and it's not really going to show its age. But there are a couple of shots specifically of the Uruk-hai that look like they could have been like a Korn music video.
Okay, who are the Uruk-hai?
So the Uruk-hai are the special orcs. They're like extra beefy bad guys with like the handprints on the face.
Okay.
When they were making them, they had a couple of like top-down camera shots that went kind of like this, and it felt very like of its time.
Okay.
And there were a couple of weird fades. Did you get that at all too, or?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to species in this, I know elves, I know dwarfs, and I know hobbits. I mean, that's it.
Perfect. Okay. We'll help you. Don't worry.
And orcs. I know what an orc is, but like
okay.
Uruk-hai.
Yeah, and then They're just the beefier ones. They're the ones where I think Sauron at one point, or I think Gandalf was like, they're combining men and orcs. That's
Hmm.
that's essentially what they are.
Yeah.
So then from the Shire, we get the heroes now leaving. They then go to the Prancing Pony. They go to Weathertop essentially, and they meet Aragon. My thoughts on this: I forgot I sexed the camera so much. I'm trying to say it politely, but it felt like for the first like 30 times we saw him, he was just glaring into the camera, real tight on him.
I mean, that's what you get Viggo Mortensen for, is to just eye up the camera the whole time.
I mean, he
Um,
does a good job of it.
yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that's he's supposed to be like the suave hero of the whole thing.
Hmm.
So they do a good job of showing that, like he's very cool and collected and all of that.
So originally he wasn't Aragon. So Stuart Townsend, who's an Irish actor, actually was Aragon for 4 weeks. I think 4 or 5 weeks of shooting, and they realized that he didn't quite have the gravitas to play Aragon, so he got kicked out. And I mean, obviously Viggo Mortensen came back in, which I think was the right call. Because I mean, honestly, have you heard of Viggo Mortensen before? I guess in 2001, did you know of him before this movie?
I had seen him in uh 28 Days, the movie where
Oh
he's in
wow!
rehab with Sandra Bullock.
Oh
I had
goodness, is it
seen
a good
that.
movie?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, I never really knew who Viggo Mortensen was.
Hmm.
Um, but since these movies came out, I was like, okay, yeah, that's the guy from Lord of the Rings.
I mean, that's kind of
Um,
how I am with him now. I mean, I even have that with Orlando Bloom, and Orlando Bloom's been in a lot of stuff, but he's just Legolas for me always.
yeah,
Okay, so from essentially meeting him, they then go into end up essentially in Rivendell, and it was at this point in the movie on my rewatch that I realized that this is about, and I want to hear if you have the same thought. I want This is about as much magic-y stuff as I can handle in a movie. I think that fantasy as a series tends to be, or as a genre, tends to be kind of a hard sell for me. And specifically that scene with Eowyn holding Frodo and whispering and making the river flow more. I think that tends to be my limit of fantasy things that I'm okay with before I start to get in like, okay, they're just gonna magic everything, I guess, and kind of get sick of it. Did you have that reaction to anything magical in the movie at all? Because they just kind of introduce elements very quickly and then don't talk about them again.
I think they do a good job of establishing magic as a thing with Gandalf
Mm-hmm.
setting off the fireworks, and then when he flips out on Bilbo,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it lets you know that magic is a thing and it exists, but it has its limits.
Yeah.
Because even with Gandalf being held captive, by Count Dooku, uh,
Good.
like
Good.
he can't escape. Like he even with all his power, he is stuck. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it does a good job of establishing that there are rules to this. It's not just going to be like, oh, go throw the ring in Mount Doom and like, okay, poof, we're there. We took a port
Right.
key and
Was there
so.
anything Harry Potter-ish in here that you were like, oh, okay, Harry Potter definitely stole that?
I mean, Gandalf is definitely Dumbledore, like
Yeah.
right, like
Yeah. I mean, we can say that
old
pretty
gray.
safely.
Yeah, he's old gray wizard. So
Also, the memory thing that Frodo does in the part in the woods with the elves, where they pour like liquid into the thing. I mean, that's straight from Harry Potter. I mean, not that from Harry Potter. Harry Potter basically lifts that and is like, okay,
yeah.
great, that's part of my stuff too. And now that I'm just rewatching the Harry Potter series, the parallels are really funny to me.
So you're watching both series at the same time.
It's a bit of so Romana is reading the books, and as she finishes a book, we then watch a Harry Potter movie. So she'll do
Okay.
book movie, book movie. So it's been a slow process, but yeah, we're rewatching that.
It's weird to think that this movie and Sorcerer's Stone came out the same year, a month
I'm gonna,
apart.
I didn't realize that. I'm gonna say that the effects in this are a billion times better.
Yeah, I would say so too, because the following year you have the second one in each of those series comes out, but they had been working on the Two Towers for years, whereas they went right into production on Chamber of Secrets after Sorcerer's Stone was complete, or Philosopher's Stone. I'm
Wow.
sorry, I forgot you were in London.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't understanding what you were talking about. Thanks
Yeah,
for clarifying.
but I think even for the same time period, like it,
Mhm.
like not to say that the effects in Harry Potter don't hold up, because I think those first two definitely aged the best out of the whole series. Maybe the
Mhm.
third one as well. Like those first three
Yeah.
age pretty well compared to the rest of them, which I think
Mhm.
show their flaws a little bit as time goes on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the years and practical dedication that they put into these films shows a lot more than they do in the Harry Potter films.
And it also makes these films hold up so much more. I mean, for a film that has so much magic being slung around, it all feels very real still in
Yeah,
an age of like people, I don't know, really criticizing what a CG thing is. I don't know. I was surprised at how well it held up despite some like wonky little scenes.
yeah.
So on our journey then through Middle Earth, we are now officially at Rivendell. The Fellowship is together, and we get two memes in one scene in the council. You get one does not simply walk to Mordor, and you get and my axe in one glorious scene. This begs the question, Alan, did the fact that this movie in particular was it that it was so memed up until this point, did it give you what I'm going to rightfully call the Star Wars Episode 3 effect, where you watch going, ha, meme, ha, meme, ha, meme, and it almost like ruined enjoyment of the movie?
I feel well. One that does not ruin the watching Revenge of the Sith at all. Um,
Fair, fair.
no, because I can only think of one other meme from this one, and that's the "What about second breakfast?" Uh,
Good.
so it wasn't like those were the three, and
Hmm.
even the and you have my axe isn't really one that I know that well. Uh,
Sure.
but as far as Lord of the Ring memes go, I think I can think of two more from the next two films, and that's it.
Hmm.
And one of them isn't even a meme; it's just a like internet poop thing. So
I don't know this, so I need to see it.
yeah,
Maybe that's what we post next week.
yes,
So then at this point, we now have the Fellowship together. They decide that they now need to take the ring to Mount Doom. They then go from Mount Doom and they essentially end up in the Mines of Moria. This is my favorite part of the movie, in the mines.
okay.
I think that the backstory is there. I think the characterization of one of the Fellowship is there. Because the one thing I realized at this point is that they don't give much backstory to really any of the members of the Fellowship. You get that Sean Bean is a human and likes being a human. You get that Legolas is an elf and likes being an elf. You get that, Aragorn is a bit broody. But finally you get like Gimli's backstory. What did you think of this scene at all, of the whole Mines of Moria sequence? Because this also has not a meme, but a very famous part in it in Gandalf's "You Shall Not Pass."
I enjoyed it. Um, so having a little bit more context from the first Hobbit film,
Hmm.
I understood it a little bit more when it came to Gimli.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Okay.
knowing that what was it, his grandfather or father was in
Mhm.
the Hobbit pack of dwarfs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think it was his
Um,
grandfather.
yeah. So give me the just so I'm clear on the history here.
Hmm.
Give me the cliff notes of what happened here, because I'm still a little bit confused of what happened in these mines.
In Mines of Moria.
Yeah.
So what they had done was it used to be this big thriving city that was essentially used to mine mithril, which is what Frodo's tunic thing was made out of. And we'll have to talk about that in a sec. But it was essentially used that's how they got their wealth. So it was this big kind of lively mining town. They ended up drilling or mining too deep.
Hmm.
And in going too deep, they had essentially awoken the Balrog, which is the big like the big smoky monster, and at the same time, orcs kind of flooded the place. So they essentially held up, and everybody inside it died. Gimli had apparently been out traveling since before that happened, didn't realize that happened, and came back to find everybody that he was excited to see again completely dead.
Okay.
And you get the sense that Gandalf kind of knew what was going on, because he's like, I don't ever want to go into the mines. And then,
Yeah. So, okay. So Gimli was under like, so all of that happened recently.
very recently. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, recently in terms of Gimli not understanding what had happened, but not recently enough that they weren't still skeletons.
Okay. Cool. In the chat,
Yeah.
friend of the show, Josh says, I believe this will be part of the new show.
That's very exciting, and something that I really, really want to see.
Yeah.
I don't know much about this show, so I'm excited to be surprised
Yeah.
by it all.
Okay. The other thing that I was kind of like, I knew it was coming, but I was like surprised that I had to put in a new disc for it.
Yeah.
Is just all of the walking shots. Like the first 20 minutes of the second disc is just them walking.
Okay, so this is perfect, because this is one of the things I keep hearing criticism about for this movie is, well, just 3 movies of people walking. Was it distracting for you? Was it bad for you?
No, because what's great about it is, yeah, they're walking, but you get this beautiful landscapes of New Zealand as Middle Earth. So it's not like they're walking on a green screen and like just going nowhere. They're actually walking these places. You get to see this these beautiful landscapes, and it's why tourism to New Zealand has boomed in the last 20 years, is because of these movies, and you can see why, because it's a beautiful country.
And the other thing too, and this is one of the things I was hoping to get your like feedback on, is I think the music also really helps these scenes. I mean, if the music wasn't as incredible as it is, I think that those scenes would read more boring, I think, because you get these lovely like horn swells during those wide shots.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the music in the movie?
I've had that main theme of the Fellowship stuck in my head for the last 3 days.
Good.
So
put it on during mundane tasks, and it makes everything feel more epic.
Yeah, I might have to.
You'll have to. Just the little wins. The little wins.
Yeah.
So, how much do you know about? So essentially, we then get to the end of the movie. Did you know Sean Bean died?
I mean, if Sean Bean shows up in anything, I assume he dies.
Okay, I had a feeling.
Sean Bean could show up on Sesame Street, and I think he'd be dying by the end of the segment.
Oh, goodness. So the movie does one of the things, specifically in the Mines of Moria, that annoy me a little bit, but I guess is, the whole Chekhov's gun thing, where Bilbo hands Frodo the mithril and goes, "This will withstand any stab." And then an hour later, the movie hopes you forgot that happened and makes a feast out of Frodo getting stabbed. Were you fooled at all, Alan?
No, because
okay.
I feel like Frodo at this point is just the punching bag, and like he's just gonna keep getting beat up the whole rest of the two movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he's got a giant target around his neck with that ring, so it's like, okay, yeah, they're gonna go for him, and of course he's not gonna die. He's the hero of the thing.
So
it's the kid. It's the kid from Forever Young. You're not gonna kill the kid from Forever Young.
All right, so that is a question that I wanted to bring to you at this point. So you've now seen the first movie, you've seen a bit of the second movie. Who is the hero? If you had to label one hero, who is the hero? And I want to see if this changes with you on your first watch of every movie, which is why I'm doing this. I'm not being pedantic. There's no right or wrong answer. I have the same opinion that a lot of nerds do about this movie. I'm one of the nerds, but who is the hero?
Who's the hero, or who's the main character?
I think Frodo's our point of view character for this movie, but who is the hero? Because I don't think they're the same.
I mean, Frodo's definitely on his hero's journey. But I think this film does a good job of setting up Aragorn as the hero for for the series because
Mm-hmm.
like you get introduced to him. He's the reluctant hero. Like they're both reluctant, and in their quests, but they go about them anyway. I know a little bit just from the titles of the movies what happens with Aragorn.
Fair.
Spoilers. But yeah, so I think it's setting it up for him to be the hero of the trilogy going forward. But I think there's one main quest in this film, and then it splits.
Yeah.
And then you have the storytelling for the second one, which I'm excited to get into next week, where you have it split up into the three groups.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk a bit next week about what I remember from that film, but
Okay, good.
so that's my answer.
Okay. And with all of that in mind, how much do you know about what happens next? Do you think that this trilogy could surprise you? Because as 11-year-old Devin, I didn't know the source material. I didn't know what was happening. This trilogy absolutely surprised me. This trilogy is now over 20 years old. Spoilers are just something that happens in our popular culture. So do you think you know essentially where everything is going? Do you think that it still has room to surprise you with things?
I think there are moments that can surprise me, but I think overall I know where it's going.
Okay.
But it's not about where you're going, it's how you get there. So I'm expecting 2 more movies of just shots of hobbits walking over mountains. So
That was also a really, really good way to summarize this.
yeah. Okay, so now I've got questions for you.
I can't wait.
All right. You're having me watch the extended editions.
Yes.
What did they add to this?
Okay. So they
And
added
can I guess a few things that they added?
Of course you can. Of course.
Okay, the scene when it's just Frodo and Sam in the woods at night and they're seeing all of the elves walking off in the woods, was that added?
No, that was original.
No? Oh, that was original?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think that was all I had.
No.
Because I honestly don't remember that at all.
So they end up doing some interesting things, which is actually why I wanted you to watch this movie or this version of it, is because they don't just cut in chunks of things. Sometimes they do. So sometimes they will cut in like whole cloth chunks of things. But what they'll also do is they'll reorganize a few scenes and use them in different contexts and fill them out. So one of the big things is essentially how the Uruk-hai are made, and watching how Isengard, which is Sauron's place with all of the bad guys, watching how that turns out orcs and is building up its army. It's covered very kind of tersely in the original version of it, but it's gone into a lot more depth here. So you watch them make the swords, you watch them kind of birth the Uruk-hai, and it's really interesting to see this as opposed to like the 3-second shot that you get of it. They also rearranged some of the scenes in Bag End in the beginning, which I really like. And you know, it's nothing incredibly substantial where if you didn't watch this version, you wouldn't understand it. But it adds more context to things. It adds a few lines of dialogue. I mean, in all fairness, it only adds 30 minutes to an already long movie.
Yeah.
So it's not like these are, whole sequences that we're missing out on the original one. But, the big deal is all the new stuff in Bag End. And it's a combination of essentially organized shots, new scenes, and slightly extended scenes. So if I remember right, for example, when they go into the Mines of Moria, kind of walk in the front door, doors close, and Gandalf's like, all right, we're going. But in this version, the monster from the garbage compactor in Star Wars grabs Frodo for half a second and then throws him back in. I think that scene was added for the original one, or for the extended version. So it's a lot of stuff like that, but it helps to flesh out the world. You get reorganized scenes and you get kind of more explanation on things.
Okay. The other thing that I couldn't remember from watching it before was Gollum following them in the original? Like,
Yeah.
do they
Gollum was already
address
there.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember that was another moment that I freaked out as a kid because Gollum's in The Hobbit, and I love The Hobbit. I was like, I'm talking about him. So he's the one thing that I'm actually most interested to see in the next movie, how well his CG held up, because he won awards for how good that CG was. And I remember being like, yeah, he's just a character on the screen. And I'm ready to I'm ready to not have those same feelings again, and I'm a little bit worried about it.
I'm going to ruin Gollum for you next week. Just
Are
stay
you
tuned.
really?
Oh, I
Okay,
am.
good.
I could do it right now if I wanted to.
No, save it. I'm interested.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. Other than that,
Hmm.
I don't know if I had anything else I wanted to ask. What is the biggest thing that they add to this for the extended? Like, is there anything in particular that you think makes this better than the theatrical version?
Like something that's like literally like why I would point to it
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the normal version. It's a tough question. I mean, I think ultimately for me, it just feels more complete
Okay.
because they don't leave as much out. Once we start talking of this one's particularly hard for me. Once we start talking about the later movies, they have whole character arcs that aren't ended until you watch the extended versions.
Okay.
And that's when to me they become more important. This movie doesn't hide anything behind the extended version as much as it does kind of throw scenes around. So ask me that question again in a movie or two, and I'm going to have a much better and much more coherent answer for you. But this one just
Okay.
is a good watch.
All right. Other than that, R.I.P. Gandalf. Um,
Oh, poor Gandalf.
we was really looking forward to seeing him in all three movies, but guess that's what the Hobbit trilogy is for. Uh, no, I know he
They
comes.
had to get him back.
I know he comes back.
Oh, damn it. I didn't know. I got so excited. I was like, oh, something's going to surprise Alan. But I'm like, he had to
No,
have seen pictures of him in white.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. He's on the cover for all of them.
Is he really?
I think so.
Oh, damn it. I mean, again, it's 20
Yeah,
some years old. I can't be surprised.
dead center for Two Towers, and then off to the side for Return of the King.
Spoilers.
So I will say, oh wow, the chat just did something weird in Streamlabs here.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. So I did find it. I was looking through my menu on the first disc when I didn't want to get up and change it. There was a bonus feature in there that I thought was a lot of fun to watch right after watching the movie, and it's introduced with Peter Jackson. Like, here's something fun that we helped. We hope you'd find on this disc, and it's a skit from the MTV Movie Awards in 2002 with Jack Black and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Where Jack Black is playing Frodo, but he has the ring as a Prince Albert.
Oh my god.
Uh, so the whole thing is like everyone just looking at the ring, and he's like, "Guys, my eyes are up here." It's a
I didn't know that was
very fun sketch if you can find it. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But yeah, and I remember that movie awards because they also did a thing where he was Spider-Man because he's swinging through and like he's Spider-Man on the rooftop looking down at the city, and it's like the clip from the movie where the woman's like, "Save my baby," and Jack Black's like, "Nope," and then just
you know what? I'm vaguely starting to remember this. I missed
Yeah.
when MTV Movie Awards were cool like that.
yeah, they haven't been cool in a minute, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a bit of a shame.
All right, let's go look at the chat here quick. Did we
Yeah.
catch the car in the background? I did not.
Did you not? Okay, we'll have to point it out. So, specifically when they're leaving Bag End first, they start walking through, it's just a cornfield. It's the four of the hobbits, and they have this wide shot. And in the background, you can see a car. And in some versions, it's been digitally removed. I think they re-released this movie or this trilogy in theaters, and it was removed for the trilogy. But there is a car in the background of this shot. It's not very obvious to fit in the distance, but you can. It's not a horse.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Those covers look sexy. Yeah, they do.
They do though.
This whole box set is kind of cool. Like, I don't have many box sets. Like, I usually have like the complete like discography of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got like the map of Middle Earth in here.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, this is the next one. Nice and shiny
Ugh.
too.
So
Um,
while fantasy movies aren't really my thing, I do read a lot of fantasy novels, and this trilogy does the one thing that I really love when you start getting into a long series is it goes, here are these characters, we're going to introduce them to you, and we're going to get you to love them and know that you get to spend so much time with these characters. And like for me, it's that promise of more time with Gimli, more time with Legolas coming in the future that like makes me love this movie so much more. Do you have that at all, or are you like, if Gimli's on the screen for another second, I'm out?
I'm excited to see more Gimli. This actually lines up perfectly with friend of the show Josh's question. Who's
Oh,
your favorite member of the Fellowship?
I was gonna ask
Uh,
that.
I'm excited to see more of Gimli and Legolas because I know a little bit about their dynamic and
Mhm.
I know stuff. So I'm excited to see that connection evolve going forward. And like they were only in half of this movie, like literally half of the movie because I had to put in the second disc and they were there. Um, but beyond that, like I said, Merry and Pippin were my
Yeah.
favorite. Like I enjoyed them from the beginning. I really like Gandalf. Like Gandalf isn't as all knowing as I thought he was. Like the fact that you had to see him go do research and all of that was interesting to me.
Yeah, and
So
I don't know. You see kind of all of these characters' flaws, and I think specifically in this movie, they really only give you a bit of a character arc for Frodo, and you get one for Aragon, and that's really it. And I was surprised because I think I remembered or thought I remembered, um, specifically them being much more involved and you getting more kind of character dynamic between all of them. But you
mhm.
really don't. I mean, you get that Gimli's a bit racist and he's being a jerk towards elves, and you get that Legolas is wise and trusts Gandalf. But like, that's really all you get of their personalities in this one. And I was shocked that it was so light.
Yeah, it does a really good job of. I think the film, this one at least, does a great job of introducing the hobbits and letting you know what their deal is, how Frodo and Sam interact. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you get to know Gandalf a lot in that first act. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you get to the second act, it introduces these characters who are going to have a bigger role going forward throughout the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Rest of the movies, sorry. But yeah, I'm excited to see more of them as we go forward over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it's yeah, I mean that's my favorite is these characters, here they are, you love them, here you see them at their base, and then you get to see them at their best, you get to see them at their worst, you get to see them, literally grow as people. And that's I think one of my favorite like things about long trilogies like this or long books like this where you get to watch then who they're going to be in the third movie is not
Mm-hmm.
who you saw them at today. And I
Yeah.
think I love that. And that's one of those kind of beauties of storytelling that just makes me really love movies.
So I do have another question for you, and this
Yeah.
might get confusing.
Okay.
Um, so the film establishes at the beginning there were so many rings made.
Yes.
What happened to all of those rings? Are they still in play out there somewhere, or
Yeah.
were they all destroyed? Like what? Where are those rings in it, or do I have to watch the Amazon show to find all that out?
So you know where some of them are based on what we've seen so far. So, lady, I think her name's Gadriel, the one that you see in the woods that turns all blue and crazy when she sees the One Ring with Frodo.
Hmm.
She has one of the rings, and she shows Frodo, "I have one of the rings."
That CGI did not age well.
No, it did not. No, 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 it did not. I was mostly not watching the screen at that point for
I
whatever.
thought she was the girl from The Ring at one point there.
Yeah, so you
Okay,
know
so
where that is.
she has one, but do the other elves have the rest of the elf ones? Or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, they have them. Uh, also, they talk a bit about where the rings for the men went, or for the humans went, and I
those are
don't
the
know that they.
creatures
Yeah,
chasing them.
yes,
Okay,
yeah, they are. I didn't know that they made that clear yet, but yeah, those are the ring wraiths, or essentially the Nazgul. They're the ones that are corrupted by the power of the ring. It's
okay.
essentially establishing that men were the weakest with it.
So they were, so all of the rings will like. Are all of the rings based in evil then, or
They're just powerful.
okay,
And the power, I think what it's showing is what power does to different individuals.
okay,
So, power essentially in the hands of men tends to corrupt. Power in the hands of elves makes them more wise, makes them more, judicious about how they approach things. Power in the hands of dwarves makes them, party more or something. I don't know. I don't know too much about the dwarves' rings, to be honest. But I like that part of it where it's an analysis specifically of power and how it's
Okay.
held by people.
So do we find out more about the rest of the rings going forward in the movie?
I think we do, yes. And
Okay.
if we don't, I will do enough research to let you know about
Okay.
them by the time we get to the third one, because I don't remember if those are answered or not, but I know that I know them and don't want to spoil
Okay.
them.
Well, chat spoiled it for you. The rest of the rings were given.
Thanks.
The rest of the rings were given to the Power Rangers and Shang-Chi. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, job done.
Yeah.
Thank you, chat.
Crossing franchises there, Marvel and Power Rangers. Hell yeah.
This was almost a Disney property. It was almost sold to Miramax, which is owned by Disney at the time. So
yeah,
could've been there.
we'll have to do a deep dive on some of the other versions of this because I know there's an animated one, correct?
I'm almost going to require you to watch it for the third movie. I don't want you to see it yet because it moves very quickly through all of the trilogy.
Now, so is it one movie based on the whole
It's
trilogy?
one movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can find it easily, I am down for that.
Oh, there are. I mean, I think it's all on YouTube. To be entirely honest with you,
Okay.
it is. It's a drug trip of a movie. I mean, it was back in the time where animation was coming up a bit more, and they would essentially just rotoscope human actors. Oh, it's so good. I can't wait for you to see it.
I'm excited for that. Okay.
Yeah. So, anything else? Any other questions for me? I mean, impressions from you are that you like this one, you're excited to go forward. That's where I was hoping you would be. I'm just gonna nerd out these 3 weeks, if I'm being entirely honest.
No, that's fine. You do you. I will let you know.
Perfect.
Come the end of these 3 weeks,
Mhm.
you are losing 2 of your picks going forward. Because you're
Fair.
having 3 weeks. But to fill in those gaps, we're gonna have some friends of the show on the show. So one of them has been in the chat all night. So we're gonna have our friend from Nerf Herders Assemble come in at some point next month, and we're gonna talk about something that's not Lord of the Rings. So
Sorry, I don't understand what that means.
yeah,
I don't get it.
you will.
Good.
Yeah, I think that does it for our first entry into the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening or watching. You have to watch this podcast on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and listen to our podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also visit our website at rumrunnerspodcastnetwork.com and check out all the other Rum Runners podcasts. Until next time, for You Have to Watch This Podcast, you have my axe. I am Alan.
And my sword. I'm Devin.
And we will see you next week. Fly, you fools!